Like I always thought to myself, just the general mindset was, he's Trent, he's your son, he's always going to be there, and I kind of took my time with him for granted. Just be there as much as you possibly can for your children and your wife and your spouse, your husband, your family, your mother, your siblings. The time that you have with them is so finite, and you think it's forever, but it's like before you know it, a snap of a finger. You hear this from old people all the time. Life, it goes by in the blink of an eye, and it really does. All you have is this moment, this eternal now. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Standing Nowhere podcast. This is your host, Jacob, and as always, it is a pleasure to be back with you. I am going to tell you guys right out of the gate that I am in a much busier time crunch period, being the holidays. As I record this, it's December 9th. It'll come out on Thursday. And normally through each week, I have a process and a workflow for this podcast where I plan out and outline basically what I want to talk about. And most of the time it's spontaneous. It'll come to me during the week. I'll get like a topic or an idea, and I'll really drill into that and just see what comes out of me through the week. And I'll fill the outline up, and then I'll organize it and then jump into an episode. This week, I have not had a lot of time. I've been working a lot, and I have to work a lot of extra hours than I normally do, and just things have been all over the place. And I've had an idea for an episode that I've wanted to do for a while, which is to be spontaneous on a solo episode. And I have done my first 3 episodes going back almost 6 months ago. They were spontaneous. I did not have any outline or preparation for them, and there's reasoning behind that. But episode 4 onward, I've always had like an outline or an idea of what I wanted to say. And this time, I thought it would be fun to just do some spontaneous topics. And this week, since I didn't have time to do an outline, I've had this idea kicking around in my head. Wouldn't it be fun if I had some spontaneous topics that were presented to me that I have no prior knowledge of, and I just speak from the heart about them? And that's exactly what I'm going to do for this episode. So I've got about 5 or 6 topics generated by Claude that just came out of a response. I have not seen them yet, except for the first one. And I'm going to start talking about it now. The first topic that Claude is giving me, and Claude knows me decently well. It knows the podcast decently well because it uses, it has like a behind the curtain memory. So it kind of knows your workflow and your mind space. So I had Claude generate about 5 or 6 topics. We're going to jump into the first one now. The first one that came out of the chute says, talk about what it's like to maintain a contemplative practice while driving 50 plus hours a week in the gig economy. How do you stay present when you're exhausted and the work feels mindless? And I really like this question, this topic, because mindfulness and meditation or staying present, it's one of those things where when you practice, you're usually in a serene environment, which is good. But that's not real life. Like take me, for example. I wake up at 6:30 every morning. I have a little caffeine in the morning and do my business, and then I meditate for 30 minutes every day in the morning. Some days I'm a little busier. I might only get 15 to 25. Or I might not get to meditate at all in the morning, and I'll make up for it later, like at my lunch break or when I come home from work. But I always make it a very serious point to set time aside to meditate 30 minutes every day in the morning. It just starts my day off right. And I do Zazen meditation. Sometimes I'll do Vipassana, and I won't go into the weeds with those. But when you meditate in a peaceful environment, it's good practice. You keep coming back to your breath or your posture, like in Zazen, and you don't get lost in the content of thought. In other words, what you're thinking about, but you simply notice after you've been taken away by thought, you keep coming back. And in a peaceful environment, it's great practice. But like to Claude's question, what is it like to maintain a contemplative practice while driving 50 hours a week in the gig economy? How do you stay present when you are exhausted and work feels mindless? So after I get up off my cushion, I take my daughter to school and I drive from 8 a.m. through to 2 p.m. So that's 6 hours of driving. Now, when I'm on the road, I have 3 to 4 apps that I am delivering on. Grubhub, Uber Eats, and DoorDash. And I drive a stick shift as well. So I am juggling 3 apps, and they are shooting offers at me constantly. So it's difficult. My car is pushing a lot of miles now. It's got 197,000 miles on it. I'm creeping up on 200K. There's a lot in my head too. I have one of those minds that can go in many different directions very easily, very quickly. And when I'm on the road, my brain is constantly, it's very mean. I've heard a quote that says, your mind is like a dark alley. You don't want to go down it alone. And when you're doing gig work, you're by yourself all day in your car. So it's real easy for your brain to bully you, at least in my case. And I have really hard thoughts. So to answer Claude's question, what is it like? I'm just kind of describing that process to you guys. Like I get off my cushion, I go drive for 6 hours, and that's just the first half of my day. And all kinds of thoughts appear like, why didn't you go to college? Or why didn't you get a trade skill? Or why didn't you stay with the last job you were at and try to move up? Or why haven't you applied for more jobs? I could list an endless amount of things that come at me. So those are things that come at me while I'm driving, and I just keep coming back to the feeling of my stick shift, the feeling of my steering wheel. Like today, for example, I stayed up late watching a movie last night. I usually go to bed by 10:30, 11 at the latest, and I stayed up till midnight. I was watching Django Unchained. I'm a huge Quentin Tarantino fan, and I just couldn't stop watching that movie, and gave into my my desire, and I finished the film, but I'm a little tired now. And when I don't get a full night's rest, I usually get headaches. So today I've had a little bit of a headache. So while I'm driving, I am I was basically mindful of my headache. When the headache would arise, I would oscillate between, this headache, and then, there's a headache. There's a huge chasm of a difference between, I have a headache, this hurts, to being aware that you are experiencing a headache. I don't know if I'm explaining that right, but headaches are wonderful because they are easy objects to observe in mindfulness, because it's like a gnawing pain. Like right now I have the headache, for example, and it's easy for you to just wince your eyebrows, pinch your nose, the bridge of your nose, and just be totally consumed with it as somebody, quote, that has a headache and is experiencing pain. But for me, I just use it as an object of mindfulness, either that or driving the car, or the gig apps that I have are super annoying. They beep at you constantly, especially Uber. Uber is like a bing, 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 bing. So I'll be listening to contemplative podcasts, things like that, or even my own episode, because I want to hear it. Like, how did it come out? And just when there's like a good juicy bit that I'm really into, Uber will hijack my volume, pause the podcast, and just go bing, 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 bing in your ear. And it's really annoying. And they do it on purpose so that you don't miss the offer. But But that's the reality that I'm living in. That is the present moment. And, it's not so bad. It's not the end of the world. But when I feel annoyance at the podcast and I get lost in the annoyance or the anger, I eventually will catch that and use that as a pointer to come back to mindfulness. I might say to myself, there's the digital sound. I just sort of, notice it in silence, and then I come back. So it's just this oscillation all day long of coming back and seeing how long I can stretch continuities of mindfulness where I am in the present moment and I'm waiting for the next thought to appear while I'm observing my five senses. And then when a thought comes in, usually I notice it right in the beginning, but there's times where I don't. It carries me away. And then when do I notice? Do I notice it in the middle of the thought or after the thought is concluded? Honestly, it is just noticing it, noticing how my body feels when I come home on my lunch break. Are there any aches and pains? Sometimes my hands hurt because I am driving all day, and your hands have to maintain a certain level of tension as you handle the steering wheel or the shifter. And then when you finally get to relax, all of that tension all day kind of builds up, and I like to massage my hands. I'll dig my thumb really hard into my hand and just focus on how it kind of hurts but feels good at the same time. And I use that as an object of meditation or focus. In a nutshell, I try not to get lost in the storyline of my mind. And I just try to notice when there is thinking, not so much the content of the thoughts. And then I just come back. And if a thought is really important or I need to note something, I'll just make a note of it in my phone and then come back, or I'll just say like, Siri, remind me about this thing later, and it'll make the note for me. I think I pretty much covered that. So yeah, that's about 10 to 12 hours of driving and kind of a little peek of what my day looks like. So yeah, let's move on. We'll go to the second topic from Claude. I'm scrolling really slowly so I don't see the third topic. Okay. Topic number 2. Claude says, 18 years ago, you recorded Green Day covers as a newly divorced dad. 6 months ago, you started this podcast. What is it about creative expression that calls to us even when no one might be listening? And this is really important. 18 years ago, I was a single dad. In my first marriage, my ex-wife, we were both really young couple, young parents. She did not, for some reason, like me playing guitar. And I used to love to play guitar. I played a 6-string electric guitar, and she didn't like it. So during our 3 years together, I pretty much stopped playing guitar. After I got divorced, for reasons I won't really digress into, I became a single dad. She started visiting maybe once a week with our son, and then she was pretty much out of the picture for the next 10 to 12 years of his life. She'd see him very rarely. And I don't say that to speak ill of her. Again, we were young, she's become a much bigger part of his life now. But at the time, 18 years ago, when I recorded, I recorded the American Idiot album by Green Day. I covered the whole thing. I think there's maybe one track that I forgot to upload. And, I was a new single dad, and I thought, well, I can play guitar again, and I want to express myself again. So I bought a guitar. I got an amplifier. I got a really fancy pedal so I could do some of the special effects on my favorite albums. And to answer Claude's question, what is it about creative expression that calls to us even when no one might be listening? So creative expression is the most important thing that you can do as a person. If you are not expressing yourself creatively, it almost feels like you're dying inside. So it's very important that you express yourself creatively, artistically, and art and creativity come in many forms. Like Claude said, 18 years ago, I recorded I covered the Green Day album, and now I'm doing podcast episodes, trying to reach out and inspire people or help people manage whatever they need to manage in their lives, and I'm not an expert. I'm not a teacher. I'm not a guru. I'm just sharing what has helped me out of a dark place. And it feels very good to express myself creatively on this podcast. And it felt good 18 years ago when I just, I picked up a guitar and I was rusty and I said, to hell with it. I'm just going to record one of my favorite albums, get it out there. If you guys want to listen to it, by the way, I'll put the link in the show notes. But my other YouTube channel was Sephiros 888, and it's spelled S-E, that's S as in Sam, E-P-H-I-R-O-S 888. I just picked up the guitar and started singing because there's too many of us in society now. We're afraid to express ourselves, and there should be no reason for that, because you are an expression of the universe, this cosmic mystery, whatever you want to call it, and it expresses itself through you. Like, that's why meditation is such a beautiful thing, because when you go silent interiorly and you create pauses in that voice in your head, you tap into something that is not restricted by the finite. Any thought, anything in form is finite. It comes to a form. There's edges to it. And it's a thing. It's limited. It's finite. But when you are in meditation, when you are with what you're doing, whether it's on a cushion or whether you're driving a car and you have a headache and you're juggling 3 apps, when you're with what you're doing, you are not restricted in concept, in a finite place of time. You are literally experiencing the eternal now. And it's so subtle that we miss it. So the more that you are able to tap into that space between the words, between the notes of music, that's where all the magic comes from. That's where the more you connect to that, the more you feel like everything is just working like it should be. I'm happy to be doing this and recording this and hoping that it helps somebody. And the way that you tap into that space between the notes, between the words, is practice. You just keep practicing. And before you know it, it starts to take over. You start to oscillate on that 50-50 zone, and then you start to dip more into the silent zone. And from that silence is where peace and bliss arise. And the actions that you take are more effective. When Claude on this topic asks me, what is it about creative expression that calls to us, even when no one might be listening, it's just the fact that you are expressing yourself. You're allowing your true self to come through you as a conduit. And when you do that, you allow creativity to flow through you. And you do that by practicing coming back. Otherwise, you're in your head about yourself or this or that, and you're not there. And the whole creative force of the universe can flow through you when you learn to come back. So what is it about creative expression that calls to us, even when no one might be listening? It feels good. But I was still doing it because it felt good and just amazing to express myself, to see what would come out of me. And that feels good. It's just our nature. All of existence is creative expression. So let's move on to topic number 3. Scroll down carefully here. Okay, topic number 3. You've said you lost close friendships through death and abandonment during your dark period. What do we learn from losing people that we can't learn any other way? And you can't can't put it into words. Like I talked about it a few episodes ago, what to do. I think I called it like what to do when your friends are gone or when it feels like all your friends are gone. And I talked about my episode, on that episode, my friend Pat, who passed away, who's a really good friend of mine. Right in the beginning when my son Trent was really young and I was a new single dad, he was a great friend. Him and Rick, they would bring me to poker nights. And one day I get a text from Rick and the text just says, Pat died. And I was like, what? I won't rehash that because I spoke to some length about it before, but it was a very hard day for me. And it took me a while to really process it. I remember at the time I had just started doing gig work and I was on the road and it was like COVID was just happening. There was like the shutdowns and I was just so devastated. And I had so much time to think about it in the car between rides. You just have to process the loss. And like when Claude asked, what do we learn from losing people that we can't learn any other way? You hear about death and impermanence, but when you actually experience losing someone you love, the reality sets in that there is nothing permanent in this world. For me now, when pain arises from people I've lost or friends who, I had one really good friend of mine. I mean, he was one of the best friends I've ever had. And it was always a great time around him. And one day he just decided to stop talking to me. And he really didn't tell me why. I have my ideas as to why, but we were such good friends, I was racking my brain about it. I sent him a letter, a heartfelt letter apologizing. And it's like, I never heard back ever, I think he was going through some stuff. He stopped talking to all of us eventually, but he stopped talking to me first. And I don't know. It was like experiencing a death, somebody that you have known for so long, over a decade. We were friends, and just like that, he was gone. And then my friend Pat passed away. My friend Chris passed away. And then my friend Pete, brother to my friend Rafi, who I had on the podcast, like I mentioned. And it was like people were just, not everyone, but people were starting to disappear from my life. And it wasn't easy, it's not easy. But it is an inevitable fact of life that eventually everything comes to an end. So what I remember that really helps me is remembering that the concept of birth creates the concept of death. The two cannot exist without one another. But if you remember that coincidence of opposites when it comes to existing and not existing, or being and non-being, or birth and death, you realize the two look different, but they are actually one thing. They are one whole. And it is death that gives meaning to life, to birth. If there was no death, there would be no meaning to birth. The two would disappear in unison. So when you mourn someone who's gone or lost, just remember they're not really gone. Their form is gone, but who they are is with you all the time. If you go back and listen to that episode I did with Rafi, at the very end, I read a poem by Thich Nhat Hanh, who talks about this, how when you lose people, you don't really lose them. They're actually with you in your mindfulness, in everything you do, in the way the light reflects on objects, the way the waves of the ocean breathe, the way the wind feels in your hair, and the feeling that arises when you mourn someone, that sensation and that emotion is a concentration of love that you have for that person. Mourn your friends, and your loved ones when they're gone. You can miss the form of Pat, the form of Pete, the form of whoever you've lost or I've lost in my life. And it's okay to let it be when you feel pain from someone you've lost. Let it be, experience it, and then watch as it passes and see what the next moment brings. So when you've experienced loss, just remember that creates gain. So I think I've spoken enough on topic 3. Let's move on to topic number 4. Scrolling slowly. Okay, Claude says for topic 4, there's being alone, and then there's being lonely. Sorry, my nose is stuffy. There's being alone, and then there's being lonely. You have experienced both. What is the difference? And how did you move from one to the other? There's being alone, and there's being lonely. You've experienced both. What's the difference? And how did you move from one to the other? So for me, I have always been a social butterfly. I don't have that gene or that mindset that's like afraid to talk to people. I like to have fun. I'm a social butterfly. Most of the people I think in our circle of friends, I think most of them met each other through me because I'm just somebody who likes to meet people, likes to shake hands. I have people that are eventually going to be on this podcast that I met on the road doing deliveries, and I just talked to them. And then eventually the topic of the podcast would come up and they said they want to be on, So I went from like a social butterfly status to being trapped in my car. You see the way I frame that? Trapped in my car doing deliveries for excessive amount of hours, 11 to 12 hours a day, like I was describing earlier, and not being able to socialize like I want to. So for me to go from being like a social butterfly to being trapped in my car, I'll frame it like that again, it was rough and I was lonely. I missed having the attention of others, of socializing with my friends, whether it be gaming online or hanging out in person. But I missed that aspect of going out and hanging out. But to Claude's topic here, there's being alone, there's being lonely. I've experienced both. What's the difference? How did I move from one to the other? So I went from a lonely state to an alone state. And some of you listening might be like scratching your head like, oh, what's the difference? Alone means all one. And what I'm suggesting to you is the difference between loneliness and aloneness is a wholeness. When you are alone, you are able to be alone and able to be happy and functional and okay. I'm not saying you need to go meditate in a cave the rest of your life, but if that was my reality, I would be okay with it. I was okay being in my car, even when it was quiet or for extended periods of time. Yes, I still miss my friends and I still miss my family, and I absolutely crave and want and desire a better living situation for me and my family where I don't have to stress about my bills or work so much and I can spend time with people again. Absolutely. It's rough. But the difference is that I am not desperately dependent on how much time I get with others. So how did I move from one to the other? Honestly, it comes back to my spiritual practice again, to being present, to being with what is. And sometimes what is my my sadness at how alone, or not alone, but how isolated I am in the car, or how alone I am. I have a very not a lonely, but a very alone life now. And I used to experience it as loneliness And sometimes I oscillate into that feeling because I am very isolated. I'm in my car for the vast majority of my day. So when I come home and I see my son, like we are playing, and I'm going to make sure that he is at Disneyland while he's playing with me. I'm throwing him up in the air, or I'm swinging him around, or I'm giving him piggyback rides, or we're pretending that he's Batman and I'm a hostage and he's rescuing me. I really try to maximize those moments, create those little memories with him, or I'll throw a ball with him in the living room or something. I don't really get to do much beyond that. My wife, she'll get to take him to like the park and things like that. But, both of us are really strapped. And when it comes to the difference between the two, it really comes down to, are you okay with being alone with your thoughts, with yourself, with your feelings? Lonely is where you want to get out of it, when you want to crawl out of it. And the key difference is when you're alone and you're okay with being alone, you still have the desire to socialize because that's an inherent need for all humans. But you are okay with that feeling because you know you can't help it right now. Whereas lonely is like my mind state 3 years ago, where I was just hoping a car would take me out. I was thinking dark thoughts. I was sad and depressed in my car. I'd get anger bursts and I'd pound my steering wheel as hard as I could and my hand would hurt. But, it's true in real life. But sometimes, like in my case, that means being patient with being in your car alone for many, many years until you figure out a way to get out of your situation. A lot of my situation is circumstance external to me, but I'm sure a lot of the reasons are internal as well. Maybe, thought loops and anxiety holding me back from applying like I should, or as well as I should, as often as I should. I'm sure there's some personal things too. So anyways, the difference between lonely and aloneness is just being okay with what is. Not in a passive way, but accepting reality as it is. Lonely, the opposite. You're pulling your hair out. You can't wait to get out of the situation you're in. I think there's a clear difference. So let's move on to topic number 5. Let's see. They have a 6th topic too. So let's see if I don't take too long on this next one. Topic number 5 from Claude. So you are a diamond level Overwatch player who games with your wife to decompress. Can real play, be a spiritual practice? Or is that just something we tell ourselves to justify it? That's a good question. And in my opinion, the answer is absolutely play is a real spiritual practice. Play is the reason that we are all here. But like anything, if you are seeking to only play, you can get addicted to video games. You can get addicted to any hobby, really, to escape. And when it becomes escapism, I think, in my opinion, that's when there's a problem. But for the most part, play is why we're here. What good is a play without a good villain, right? And it's just like that in life. Movies are modeled after real life. So when it comes to play being a spiritual practice, absolutely. When I play Overwatch with my wife, I bring my spiritual practice into it because it's actually one of the areas I struggle with the most, which is my anger. And I notice when I play Overwatch, which is a competitive game against other live humans, like it gets really intense and you can lose your mindfulness very easily. So I try to play more mindfully and I'm getting better and better at it. We all have those gamer rage moments and they're pretty funny upon reflection, but it's been a spiritual challenge of mine to bring mindfulness into my gaming. Can I be cognizant and conscious and present with every little thing that I'm doing in the game? And it actually helps calm me down. And now I just focus on my little character on the screen. Whatever I'm doing, I'll take a look around in the game and look at the sky and the artwork and stuff. Wow, this is cool, or the sounds or just whatever I'm doing. And it just nullifies all of those jitters. And I actually play better. It's just being with what is always the answer across the board, because that's reality. That's the present moment. When you're in your head, how many times have we heard it? Even if you don't practice Buddhism or Christianity or any spiritual practice, we know this intuitively, and we tell each other, get out of your head about it. Get out of your head and come to your senses. How many times have you heard that? Come to your senses. Keep coming back to the present moment. Don't let your mind carry you away. Keep coming back. That's all it is. And you don't need to be hard on yourself when you get carried away. Don't get hard on yourself. Don't get lost in the content of thought. Just notice it when you notice it and keep coming back. And notice that feeling when you come back, what it feels like to be awake again. Oh, I was lost, man. One thought, you get on like a train and it carries you for miles, and then you wake up again and you come back, and you'll oscillate and you'll flicker between those states all through the day. You oscillate between periods of wakefulness and when you go back to sleep, and you become automated and you react. And I'll make this a quick one from Claude, topic number 6. This is episode 25. If you could talk to yourself at 25 years old, knowing everything you know now about struggle and awakening and building something like this podcast, what would you say? I would say practice presence, practice mindfulness, practice being there, but above all, be as present as you can with your family, with your children, especially your children. Like my son, Trent, he moved out just over a year ago, and I miss him so incredibly much. It's not like a death, but because he's still alive, obviously, but I always thought, I just never thought about it. Like I always thought to myself, just the general mindset was, he's Trent, he's your son, he's always going to be there, and I kind of took my time with him for granted. Just be there as much as you possibly can for your children and your wife and your spouse, your husband, your family, your mother, your siblings. The time that you have with them is so finite, and you think it's forever, but it's like before you know it, a snap of a finger. You hear this from old people all the time. Life, it goes by in the blink of an eye, and it really does. All you have is this moment, this eternal now. So, especially, what would I say to myself at 25? Be there as much as you can with your son, as much as you can with your spouse or your girlfriend or your boyfriend or whatever. Be there. Just be there. You don't have to think of anything as far as what to say or what to do. Just be a presence for them. When your son is showing you his there was times like when Trent was younger and I was so busy with my own life, and he would show me something that he built, and I always took time to look at it, and I always appreciated it. But I don't know, looking back, my 42-year-old self to my 25-year-old self, if I was to change places with myself at 25 with myself now, I would have looked at his Lego structures with so much more presence, so much more mindful, just absorbing the little intricate details of everything. You want to look at the subtleties of everything. Like my daughter, when she creates any piece of art now, I look at it very closely. We have them on the fridge, and sometimes I'll just stand there staring at it for like minutes at a time, It's just, life is short. It is this life that you have now, in this body, in this form, with your children, and all the people that you have in your life. That's my final answer. If I could talk to myself at 25, I would just be there as much as I possibly could. But just be there. Yeah, that's my final answer to that. So if you guys enjoyed this episode, please let me know in the app that you're in. I could really use a 5-star high five and some reviews from you guys. If you want to leave a comment, it means the world to me if you'd leave me a comment. And if you want to be on the podcast, you can reach out to me at standingnowherepodcast@gmail.com. And perhaps, we could have you on for an episode, and you can tell us about your life, your struggles, what you've learned, wisdom you want to pass on. And with that, I will close out with, normally I have some sort of thing that I'll close out with a little bit of music. So I'll go back to my favorite little anecdote about the farmer and the neighbor. You guys have probably heard this before. I got to get out of here soon to pick up my daughter, but I'll make it short and sweet for you. There was a farmer, and he wakes up in the morning to find that one of his best horses has run away. And his neighbor at the fence, he says, "Wow, that is unfortunate." And the farmer says, "Maybe." Later that day, the horse returns with 2 horses, wild horses that it found. And the neighbor says, "Hey, that's wonderful." And the farmer says, "Maybe." Later, the farmer's son is trying to tame one of the wild horses, and the horse bucks him off and he breaks his leg. And the neighbor says, "That's unfortunate." And the farmer says, "Maybe." The next day, in the morning, there's a knock at the door. The farmer opens the door to find the military. They are recruiting young men for service to go to combat, to go to war. But they are unable to recruit the farmer's son because he has a broken leg. The neighbor says, "That's good news." And the farmer says, "Maybe." So to anyone listening, thank you for being here. Whatever's happening in your life right now, don't put a label on it as good or bad. Just let it be and say maybe. You don't know what's coming next. I love you guys. Thank you for listening. Blessings.